Hello and welcome to another Dominion Menagerie video. So right after I made the video for the bonus preview for today for the event Desperation, the rule book was posted to Rio Grande Games website and linked in the Discord. And it has images of a whole bunch of other cards from the set. Not every one of them, I think, but certainly more than enough to go through a bunch of new interesting stuff. This is all in a PDF, so this is like a little bit of an awkward format, but the good news is that the text of the PDF is like vectorized, I think, so it renders cleanly at like any zoom level. Unfortunately, the images are not, so they're very pixelated, and that's true of like the set icon, the coin icon, the cost icon, but it's still legible, so you can pretty much see what's going on. So I'm zoomed like way in on this thing. There's like a 2-column layout out to the side here where the card images are, and then over here you have like explanatory text. But I don't think we're going to need the explanatory text. Most of it is telling people how to understand rules that are pretty obvious to somebody who's played a lot of Dominion. So I'm just going to go through all the cards here. Like we start with Animal Fair, which we've already seen. So I'm not going to go through cards we've already seen. But I'll go through all the ones that we haven't seen before. Starting with Cavalry. So Cavalry, 4-cost action, gain 2 horses. When you gain this, +2 cards, +1 buy. And if it's your buy phase, return to your action phase. Before I get into this, I should also just say I'm going to keep this a lot shorter, like per card, than I've been doing with the previews, because otherwise this would take forever. So my initial reaction to this is like something that's like it's like the combination of Villa and Silk Merchant or something like that. Right? It's the +2 cards, +1 buy is like Silk Merchant. And the go back to your action phase is like Villa, but it's probably worse than both of those cards. Well, I mean, it's definitely worse than Silk Merchant, but it's probably worse than Villa too, just because the effect isn't like the fact that it's not a village means that like if you keep doing this to go back to your action phase, eventually you're just gonna be clogged with all these terminals. Gain 2 horses is nice though, but it's certainly gonna be like Villa enables all kind of crazy nonsense, and so I have to assume that Cavalry will enable some level of similarly crazy nonsense. Also, the fact that it draws when you gain it means that like doing the gain and play stuff with it in some ways is going to be easier than Villa, so that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean, so I don't mean to say less powerful than Villa probably, but still like a really this effect right here is always going to be powerful, and so this is going to be a really strong card, even though the on-playability, while certainly nice, is probably not like the strongest. All right, so moving on. Next up is Destrier or Destrier. I think it's Destrier, like Sir Destrier, I guess. So this is just a 6-cost lab, but during your turns, this costs 1 less per card you've gained this turn. So, I mean, this kind of reminds me of Wayfarer. I mean, it's not the same discounting condition, but it's like it's a card that is overcosted, and on some boards, like it's just gonna be overcosted, but on some boards it's gonna be like super cheap and like kind of crazy in that regard. I think Wayfarer is more likely to be crazy because you only have to be able to gain like one other card to make it cheap. Whereas this guy, you got to gain 2 cards to make it cheaper than a lab. If you gain 1 card, it's a lab, which I mean, lab is a good card. So like it doesn't have a stringent condition to be good, but it has a stringent condition to be great. But I mean, these can potentially be like 0-cost labs. So especially like given how many things there are in this set that gain like a bunch of horses, like you could, if you're playing like a Menagerie heavy game, you could fairly reliably probably make this thing a 0-cost lab, which is bananas. So, all right, next we have Displace. Exile, 5-cost action, exile a card from your hand. Gain a differently named card costing up to 2 more than it. So this is remodel, but with exile rather than trashing. So, and it costs 1 more than remodel. So the upside to this is that you don't actually lose the card, which is good if you're doing something like remodeling a green card. Like you can displace province to province, and you just get 6 points, unlike, you know, remodel where it's just like a pile control thing. So that's really strong. And you also, like, the fact that you don't lose the card means that, for example, if you were to like exile, or let's say you're like, oh, I want another, you know, lab. So I exile my lab, I gain a lab, and oh, look, gaining the lab means I can discard the lab I just exiled from the exile mat. So I just gained a lab straight up. So, I mean, that, you know, that's pretty nice. The downside to this relative to a card like Remodel is that you don't get to take advantage of trash for benefit. But yeah, I mean, it seems pretty nice overall. Like the fact that you don't lose the card, I think it has the potential to be a really big deal. It can basically just be a card that gains like another copy of whatever, like as like a base case, and then like you can also do things like, you know, remodel lab into King's Court, or displace, I should say, displace lab into King's Court, and then gain another lab, right? Like buy a lab or something. It's like you couldn't afford to buy King's Court, but you could afford to buy a lab, and then, you know, so on. So that's pretty cool. Next up, we've got Falconer. 5-cost action reaction. Gain a card to your hand costing less than this. And when any player gains a card with 2 or more types, action, attack, etc., you may play this from your hand. So, first of all, this card really wants to be on a board with Fairy. Second of all, okay, so it's a gainer that is a gain to hand, but it's terminal. So it's got some similarity in that respect to Sculptor. Sculptor can gain treasures to be non-terminal, but being non-terminal and gaining a treasure is also kind of like, you know, I mean, sometimes it's what you want. A lot of times it's like a little awkward. And what you really want to be doing with Sculptor is like playing villages and then gaining action cards with it, if you can. And so this is similar, right? Like this is get less than this, which isn't technically the same condition as Sculptor, but it's a pretty similar condition. But then the reaction part, so you lose out the ability to gain the villagers, and then the reaction, and I guess I don't want to digress too much on Sculptor, but you gain in exchange for that the ability to react with this. When it, you know, somebody gains a card with 2 or more types, you can play this from your hand. So obviously this makes it non-terminal, which is great. And you can, you know, so like outside of your turn, you can gain whatever you were going to gain, save the action. Like I can't offhand think of any like super clever tricks you can do with this that are contingent on it happening like during the opponent's turn, other than just maybe like denying them a card that you expect them to gain. Like there's, you know, 2 Ironmongers left, and they gain, well, Ironmonger's not a dual type, but I don't know, there's 2 mills left, or I don't know why you care about denying mills, but you know, they gain 1 and you gain the other one or something. I don't know. I mean, there might be some stuff like that, but I think mostly the value of the reaction is just going to be in turning this into a non-terminal, but maybe there's some other clever stuff you can do with it. Next up, we have Fisherman. Fisherman is a 5-cost action It's a peddler variant, so +1 card, +1 action, +1 coin. During your turns, if your discard pile is empty, this costs 3 less. So the deal here is that it's not only a peddler variant in what it does, but also how it's costed. Because it like peddler, it gets discounted. But the discounting condition here, if your discard pile is empty, means that in general you're only going to be able to gain 1 fisherman as a 2 cost, and then after that it's going to be 5, because the fisherman that you gain is going to be in your discard pile. It also means you're going to want to gain this before you gain anything else, if you're going to gain it at all. It's also worth noting that for like, trash for benefit or other things that care about costs, like chariot race, if your discard pile is discard pile, right, not draw pile. Yeah, right. So something like chariot race that cares about costs, when your discard pile is empty, this is still going to be in effect, so that could matter. So that's like something to pay attention to. Like if you're expecting to like salvage this for 5 coins, your discard pile is empty, you're only going to salvage it for 2 coins. Something else to note is if you have something that can top deck, then you can get more of these at a cost of 2, so like Watchtower or Tracker or something like that. And then obviously another way to do that is to be able to do like gain and play stuff. So like if you have like a gainer, like a workshop can gain this if your discard pile is empty, and then if you have like, you gain it, you draw it, like you don't even have to play it, you just have to like get it out of your discard pile, and then you can gain another one that also costs 2. So that seems pretty good. I think one of the things that makes peddler, the actual card peddler, so appealing is that you can often gain it for 0. Gaining it for 2 is not nearly as good as gaining it for 0, because you can't just like spend excess buys on it with no regard to how much money you have. But being able to gain it for 2 is still like pretty good, and it's worth noting that peddler only gets discounted during your buy phase, and this gets discounted during your action phase, which as I mentioned with gainers means that you can gain this card with something that gains 3 or 4s, which you can't do with peddler. So that is an important difference. Next up, we have Gatekeeper. I think this is the first attack we've looked at. There's 7, but of the new cards. So Gatekeeper is a 5-cost action duration attack. At the start of your next turn, +3 coins. Until then, when another player gains an action or treasure card that they don't have an exiled copy of, they exile it. Okay, so +3 coins, reminiscent of Swamp Hag, in that like it's basically like the thing that you get that makes it worth playing is something other than an attack / like what you get to like as a consolation prize for if the attack doesn't do anything or something like that. And it is pretty nice. Like the duration +3 coins is enough that it can do it can do a lot to help you spike price points. But anyway, let's talk about the attack, because that's more interesting. So when another player gains an action or treasure card they don't have an exiled copy of, they exile it. So basically, if somebody buys, let's say you have your Gatekeeper in play and they want to gain a Gatekeeper, so they buy a Gatekeeper. Oh, they don't have a copy of it in exile, so they have to exile it. Now, in order to get a Gatekeeper actually into their deck, they're going to have to gain another one. So let's say that they do that, and now, well, maybe Gatekeeper's not a great example, because I don't know how often you're going to want to play with more than 2 of them. But so let's just go with like a card like Lab, since I keep bringing that up as an example. So okay, they gain a Lab, they have to exile it. Now the next time they gain a Lab, they can discard that other Lab from exile, and now they have their Labs. If they want to gain another one, now they're going to have to exile it again, assuming you continue to have Gatekeepers in play. So, if you reliably have Gatekeeper in play, then somebody buying something, you know, that meets these conditions, i.e. not a victory card generally. Although night cards also ignore this, but yeah, if it is an action or treasure, they're going to have to basically like exile it every other time, and then every other time they get the exiled one back. So that is going to encourage, I guess, like encourage your opponent not to diversify their deck, because, you know, if they like want to buy like one lab and then one market and then one village and then, you know, like then all of those cards are going to be in exile. I mean, once you have the second one, it doesn't so much matter, you know, whether you buy a third one or you buy a one of something else. But the point is that this is going to be especially painful for a deck that for whatever reason wants to have like one of a whole bunch of different things. And in general, it's going to be something you want like to it's just going to be like a tempo attack, essentially, like slow down the rate at which people gain good stuff. I'm probably spending too much time on this card. But yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention before I move on is that this does have the potential to benefit your opponent if, for example, they buy a province or duchy. They can exile it, and in fact, that's would like becomes at certain stages of the game that becomes an argument for like getting a green card that you might not otherwise get because it doesn't actually go into your deck. All right, moving on. Goatherd. +1 action, you may trash a card from your hand. +1 card per card, the player to your right trashed on their turn, and it's a 3-cost action. Okay, so this card is potentially non-terminal draw, which is really good. But it's contingent on the player to your right having trashed cards. It also is a non-terminal trasher even if it doesn't draw. Yeah, this is a pretty unusual card. So okay, well, even if you don't get any draw out of this, the like +1 action, you may trash a card from your hand, like that's pretty solid. I mean, it's not amazing, but non-terminal trashing is definitely nice. You know, like only being able to trash one card. It's not like there's a lot of trashers that are going to be better, but sometimes they're not in the kingdom, or maybe you end up like getting this card like and one of those or something like that, so that you can trash non-terminal and have the potential to draw after your opponent trashed with the other trasher or something like that. Speaking of which, the condition seems to be a little bit of a like second player advantage thing, because, you know, in like the most simple case, you each get a Goatherd in the opening. Player 1 trashes, player 2 trashes and draws a card. That's not always going to be how it plays out, of course, but it's a little bit more likely to play out that way than the other way. So that's interesting. But yeah, how often is this going to draw? I can't imagine very often, because, you know, like how often are you drawing or trashing multiple cards? Like, I mean, you definitely do it, but you don't do it like that often. So, all right. Next up is Groom. Gain a card costing up to 4 coins. If it's an action card, gain a horse. Treasure card, gain a silver. Victory card, +1 card and +1 action. Oh, and I keep skipping over this, but it's a 4-cost action. So this is basically the Menagerie version of Ironworks, where you're gaining. It's a 4-cost gainer that, depending on what you gain, has different effects. Unlike Ironworks, it doesn't sort of self-synergize as well as Ironworks because you need to gain a victory card to make it non-terminal. But being able to gain horses is pretty cool. I mean, I guess I do think overall it is worse than Ironworks, but you know, it's gonna do enough of the things that Ironworks does that it's probably not going to be like too terribly dissimilar. The victory card being like a cantrip is pretty interesting, especially if you have like a dual type like mill on the board. Then you can like gain a horse and turn it into a cantrip. That's pretty nice. If you gaining a treasure card causes you to gain a silver, I guess is also like a pretty quick way to add some economy to your deck, because you can basically just gain 2 silvers at once, which is actually pretty good for a like a 4-cost gainer to be able to do. All right, next up we have Hostelry, a 4-cost action. +1 card, +2 actions. When you gain this, you may discard any number of treasures revealed to gain that many horses. So this is a village, just a village, except for it has an on-gain effect where you can gain a whole bunch of horses. And the nice thing about this is that, like, it's not that uncommon to have like a lot of money but to need a village and be like, okay, well, you know, am I gonna buy like a village for like 6 or 7 coins, or do I want to buy like the shiny, more expensive card that I also want to add to my deck, but I really shouldn't because I need a village? If you're in that situation with Hostelry, you can just discard those extra coins and gain a bunch of horses when you gain your Hostelry, so that's cool. Yeah, I mean, other than that, it's a village, like, you know, not much else to say about that. I mean, you know, sometimes you're only going to get 1 horse or even no horses, but that's okay. Villages, you know, you need them. Next up, we've got Hunting Lodge, 5-cost action, +1 card, +2 actions. You may discard your hand for +5 cards. So this is a village with optional draw to X capabilities. +5 cards is you know, better than what Minion gives you, but worse than what most other draw to X give you, but it does have the village effect, so like I could see this actually being, but that combined with the fact that you discard your hand first, I could actually see this being better than Cursed Village. I'm not even really trying to account for the hexing here, just the fact that you don't you don't need to find stuff that reduces your hand size in order for to trigger this effect. I mean, it doesn't draw as many cards as Cursed Village in theory can, but how often are you actually playing Cursed Village out of a 1-card hand anyway, or, you know, out of an otherwise empty hand? So like you know, it's like it's basically doing the thing that Scholar is doing, right? But with a village effect, and it's optional. I don't know. This seems really good to me. It's just very flexible. I mean, maybe it'll turn out to be too expensive for what it can do, but and I guess one issue is that the order of operations can be a little bit weird, because if you're gonna use the discard thing, like, you want to have played a village so that you can like play other stuff and then use the discard, but the problem is you're having to do the discard before like you can actually leverage the actions from Hunting Lodge, so maybe that presents some awkwardness. But this still seems quite strong to me. And it can like throw away, you know, green cards and treasures and things that you otherwise can't, that otherwise can kind of clog up a draw to X deck. And also, I mean, it works perfectly well with non-draw to X draw, right? So I think this should be a good card. Seen Kiln and Livery and Mastermind. All right, here's a new one. Paddock. +2 coins, gain 2 horses, +1 action per empty supply pile. This is the second card that checks the number of empty supply piles along with animal fare. Well, in city, but I mean from this set. So paddock, oh, and it's a 5-cost action. I really need to read that off first. Anyway, I guess I can kind of see where it's more valuable for it to be like, you know, less terminal and eventually turn into a village, like as the game progresses. But I don't know, the fact that it starts out non-terminal seems like a pretty big, sorry, the fact that it starts out terminal seems like a pretty big limitation of the card. If you compare, I mean, livery's right here, right? Or no, it's a little further up. But if you compare this to livery, you get less money, and a lot of times you get fewer horses. And then the only time it really has, the only times it really has an advantage are, number one, when you only have 1 gain per turn, and then livery can only gain 1 horse. Or I guess if you're buying stuff that's too cheap to activate livery's horse gaining conditions. And then number 2, when it is non-terminal. I just think, like, I don't know, the effect of going from no actions to 1 action is like, it's a big deal, but on the other hand, like, I just am so skeptical that you're going to want to put this, like, this is going to be worth, I mean, maybe it is. 2 horses is still pretty good. If you also compare it to like Cavalry, right? Cavalry also gains 2 horses. It doesn't give you the 2 coins, but like then like it has that like really strong on gain condition that's going to incentivize you to pick it up. I don't know about this card. Maybe you just gain it after there's already a pile empty or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm underrating horses here. Next up, Sanctuary. 5-cost action, +1 card, +1 action, +1 buy. You may exile a card from your hand. That seems strong. So, kind of like Junk Dealer, it is a cantrip thinner. I won't say trasher, but thinner. It gives you a buy instead of a coin, which early on is going to generally be worse because you don't like have enough money like right at the beginning to like really make use of those buys a lot of the time, but sometimes you do. And sometimes it's really nice because you want to spam some kind of cheap action. But in the long run, this is definitely a better card than Junk Dealer because, first of all, the exiling is optional, which means that, you know, you don't have to worry about like it becoming risky to play. And then like the plus buy is like, as the game progresses, plus buy is generally going to be better than +1 coin. So I mean, granted, if you only have this card to get the plus buy and not to get the exile effect, then it's an awfully expensive way of getting a market square that can't gain golds. But so long as you're making use of the exile effect, I think this is going to be quite good, because it's a thinner that like still continues to be useful as the game goes on. So yeah, I like that. Right, we've seen that. This is a new one. So Slay, 2-cost reaction, gain 2 horses. When you gain a card, you may discard this to put that card into your hand or onto your deck. Okay, so another card that has gain 2 horses, but this one only costs 2, so that gives you an idea of what the expected actual value of gaining 2 horses is. Just as a follow-up to like the Cavalry and what was that other one? I can't remember what it was called. Paddock. Yeah, as a follow-up to Cavalry and Paddock. Anyway. So I don't think in general you're going to want to get this if you're not making use of the reaction. But making use of the reaction shouldn't be too difficult because it's just when you gain a... Oh, it's when you gain a card, you may discard this. Okay. Well, that does change things a little bit. Because I was thinking you could gain a card, use the reaction, and then still play this and gain the 2 horses. But I guess you can't do that unless you have... unless you can like draw it back up. Which, I mean, sometimes you're going to be able to do, and that's going to be really nice. But in general... Oh, into your hand or onto your deck. Okay, I was gonna say, in general, you're probably not gaining this just to use the reaction, but maybe you actually are, because putting something into your hand, that's a really strong effect. And you can... There's nothing about the reaction here that intrinsically makes it terminal, although most gainers are terminal, but you know, you can potentially turn, you know, a non-terminal gainer into something that can gain cards to hand, or just turn, like, you know, if you have a village or something, like, the point is that you can you know, you can really make your gainers a lot stronger with this card. I could definitely see investing in this if you you know, if you have like a strong gainer on the board. And then if you have enough draw, you can draw this in enough actions. You can draw this back up and play it and gain 2 horses as well. I mean, that all seems pretty good. It does seem pretty good. And like, you know, I could also see this getting this in the opening potentially, just to be able to like top deck some strong card that you get on your second shuffle, provided that like gaining this doesn't hurt your chances of hitting a price point too much, which is definitely a possibility. All right, we've seen these. All right, now we got some new stuff. We're done with cards, but we've got some new events to go over. So starting with Banish, a 4-cost event. Exile any number of cards with the same name from your hand. So this is like a reverse, what you call it, temple. So instead of differently named stuff, same name stuff. I guess it's also got some similarities to Ambassador in that regard, though it's obviously very, very different. But yeah, this is something. Let's see. I mean, the most relevant thing you're going to want to do here is banish 3 estates. How easy is that going to be to set up? Like, you got to get them all into your hand and still have 4 coins, which means you're going to be wanting to like invest in some like early draw. I mean, obviously banishing a bunch of coppers is good as well, but it's definitely going to be the estates that you're going to want to focus on first and foremost in the typical case. Yeah, I mean, even I would say I think it's going to be pretty unusual to want to take this to exile a single card. Well, maybe not. I guess it depends on what like the opening options are, because like if there's like if there's a strong 3-cost, then like banishing a single estate on 4 on your 4-coin hand on a 4/3 opening is not super different from doing like plan and then buying a card. I mean, a lot of times you plan a 4-cost and not a 3-cost, so that is an important difference. But I mean, I could see that. I could see that being a thing. All right, I am going to get some water, so I'll just pause this and be right back. All right, I'm back, and I probably shouldn't have scrolled while I was paused, but I did. My apologies if that was disorienting. So next up is the event Bargain. 4 cost. Gain a non-victory card costing up to 5. That 5, for whatever reason, is really hard to read, but this is 5. Each other player gains a horse. So, I mean, the like use case for this seems pretty straightforward. You want to open, you know, with Mountebank or Recruiter or whatever other like crazy power 5, and so you get Bargain, and you have to give your opponent a horse to be able to do it. It's kind of like, you know, again, it's kind of like Borrow or something like that, where you've got some kind of downside to be able to spike a price point. It's more limited than say Borrow, because, you know, it's specifically going from 4 to 5 and not just going from like any price point to any other price point plus 1. But on the other hand, like giving somebody a horse, maybe it's better to give another player a horse than, or give the other players horses, I guess, than to like take your minus card token. I don't know. Regardless, I mean, I have to imagine that there's going to be plenty of cases where it's very, very worth it to give other people horses in order to open with the 5 that you want. I mean, if you compare this to Lost City, right? Like Lost City is a good card, but it's not the best 5. So, and you know, sometimes you gain a Lost City, and the effect of giving somebody a horse is not exactly the same as the Lost City draw, but it's pretty similar. So I think, yeah, I mean, you're gonna do this to get good 5s, and you're gonna be happy about it, hopefully. All right, next up we have Delay, a 0-cost event. You may set aside an action card from your hand at the start of your next turn. Play it. So this is really interesting. This is basically a way of converting buys into actions. So if you have, let's say, let's say there's no villages on the board. But there's like, you know, plenty of plus buy. Like if you, so one turn you can play, you know, a market, and then you can delay, like, let's say one like terminal plus buy card, and then one like terminal draw card, and then the next turn you've got an extra buy, so you can delay another terminal buy card, you know, another, and then, you know, like, okay, I basically, I think, I mean, I don't know how realistic it is. Well, I guess the other thing is you can just play a whole bunch of markets potentially. Then you don't have to jump through quite so many hoops. But like, you can basically increase your terminal space by playing actions non-terminally, because they're at the start of your turn. They don't take up an action. So like I said, you can convert buys into actions. I mean, there's going to be other reasons to do this as well. You know, just because, like, oh, I drew my good card dead, and I wanted to play it. Like, maybe it's a Traveler, maybe it's a Junker, maybe it's a Trasher, like whatever the case may be. I'd rather set that aside and play it than like gain, you know, something else, or maybe I have an extra buy to do that with. Yeah, this seems quite strong. I mean, it's somewhat reminiscent of Save, but you can do it any number of times, which I think is a really important point. Like you could literally just, you know, set aside like 10 actions or something crazy like that if you wanted to. And I mean, there is like the general notion that like one good turn and one bad turn are better than like 2 mediocre turns. So I mean, it might be worth doing exactly that, like just like loading a whole bunch of stuff into your next turn at the cost of like not doing a whole lot on your current turn, so you can just go like crazy. But I mean, if you do have the opportunity to convert buys to actions, you might also be able to basically set it up like a duration heavy deck where you are like alternating sets of actions where you're like, you know, you're delaying the same, like, you know, couple of actions each turn, but like different, you know, alternating copies of them. You're basically turning terminal actions into like non-terminal durations, something like that. Anyway, so that's really interesting. Next up, Demand, 5-cost event. Gain a horse and a card costing up to 4, both onto your deck. Now, that 4 is pretty hard to read too, but that is what it says. So Demand, I get, it's kind of like the reverse of Bargain. I mean, that's exactly what it is, actually, isn't it? Because you gain the horse rather than your opponent, and you go from, instead of going from a 4 to a 5, you go from a 5 to a 4. You do get them onto your deck, which is an important difference. So I can certainly see this being a way to turn like a bad 5-2 into a better situation. But also just, you know, like if the strong card in the kingdom is a 4-cost and you hit 5, like in general, like this is going to be really nice. Yeah, I think it's got some similarities to Ball, although it doesn't have the downside that Ball has. If anything, it has like, you know, this extra upside of top decking. I mean, it seems like it's going to be good when you're not like always just looking to hit 5 because there's really good 5 costs. When there are, you know, you're probably not going to use it very much. All right, next up we have Enclave, an 8-cost event. Gain a gold, exile a duchy from the supply. So I can see a couple different situations where this is going to be good. Maybe the most obvious is your duchy dancing. You can't risk buying a province for, you know, whatever reason. And so, hey, this is a lot better than just gaining a duchy, right? Because the duchy doesn't go into your deck, and the gold does go into your deck. Gold's good. So, you know, cool. Another situation is like if you're building towards a money deck or some other deck that wants to buy gold, which is, I mean, most decks don't want to buy gold, admittedly, but some do. And that, you know, there are times in those kinds of decks where you do just happen to hit 8 early, and you wonder like, okay, do I want to buy province now? Am I ready for that, or do I need to add more gold so that I'm more reliable as the game progresses? Well, here you go. You Enclave, you get the gold anyway, and you get a duchy for your trouble, which is, you know, pretty nice, especially if there's no other source of like additional gains or plus buy or what have you. Then that can be like a really nice way to set yourself up to like just be a little bit ahead after you know, trade provinces, that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's in a way it's a form of alt VP, even though it's just duchies, because of the fact that you're also getting the gold. So I think I mean, there's going to be a lot of boards where all that it is a way to like get some points in a slightly more preferable way, while not, you know, taking the penultimate province or whatever. But I think there will be boards where it's better than that, and it does more than that. Next up, Enhance. 3-cost event. You may trash a non-victory card from your hand to gain a card costing up to 2 more than it. So it's the event version of Remodel, but you can't use it on victory cards. But the nice thing about it is that it doesn't have to be in your deck, though you do have to spend a buy and some money on it. So, you know, that's whether that's better or not, I'm not really sure. I mean, certainly, like, oh, you know what? Okay, I slightly misread this. You can't trash a victory card, but you can gain a victory card. So you can't use this to trash estates, which sucks. But you can use it to remodel into provinces, which is really good. Huh. I am surprised by that constraint. I was really expecting it to be the other way around, where you could get rid of your estates, but you couldn't gain provinces. Yeah, I'm not sure what to think about that. The inability to trash estates is a huge downside to this, but being able to remodel into province off of off of 3 coins, like if you have a hand with copper, 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 gold, green card, you can gain a province with this event. And in the late game, that can be really strong. Huh. Okay, well, I don't know. I guess I don't really have anything more to say about that. Invest. 4-cost event. Exile an action card from the supply. While it's in exile, when another player gains or invests in a copy of it, +2 cards. Okay, so the reason, first of all, the reason that it says when another player gains or invests in a copy of it, the reason it says that is because exiling is not gaining. At no point, if you exile something and then later put it into your deck, at no point did you gain the card in the rulebook sense of the word gain. So that does mean that if you have some other way of exiling the card and then discarding it, you can get around the invest. I don't know how common that's going to be. Probably not very. But otherwise, this is basically a way to like trigger draw in response to somebody gaining a certain card, and presumably like the idea is that like you invest in some really important card, and then they, in order to not like keep drawing you cards for that, then they like try to invest in it, and then like you reinvest in it, and you sort of play ping pong that way. And that, I mean, maybe a better way to go would be like to invest in a 5 that it's like, oh, I tried to hit 5, I didn't hit 5, so let me invest in that 5 that is like a 5 that I only want 1 copy of, and then like, well, I get the +2 cards when the other player gets it. They're not going to bother to invest in it if they hit 5 because they're just going to get the card. It's only going to be a one-time effect. But hey, I just turned like 4 money into 2 cards, and maybe that's nice. I mean, I guess it's worse than Expedition, but yeah, I guess the other thing is that you exile the card yourself, so like you can at some point gain the card and then get that copy as well. So it's also just a way to actually gain the card if you can't otherwise afford it. And it doesn't have to be a 5. It could be like you could like exile King's Court or something. Okay, so it's really also a gainer, not just like something to set up draw. Interesting. Yeah, I think that's actually pretty good. Given that you actually like can get the card, like you figure I'm gonna get, if it's something you want a bunch of, I'm gonna get another one at some point anyway, so I'll invest in one now. When the other player gains it, like I get to draw cards, and that makes it easier for me to like buy one outright and then get the other one back off the exile mat. Yeah, actually, okay, I misunderstood this at first, but yeah, I think this is Pretty strong. Pretty strong. Next up, we have March. 3-cost event. Look through your discard pile. You may play an action from it. So putting aside synergy with, Villa, Black Market, and now Cavalry, the common case for this is going to be stuff like playing Travelers, playing Trashers, playing Gainers, playing Junkers. You're very rarely going to be able to march and increase your economy for your buy phase. And it could happen, but it's going to be unusual. But yeah, playing other attacks, hand size attacks, things like that. This definitely seems good to me. You can you can't necessarily go from it's really hard for me to reliably play this card every turn to I can play this card every turn, because if the reason is because there's not enough draw or whatever and you need to find the copy, well, it could be at the bottom of your shuffle and then you don't get to march it anyway. But you can certainly increase the average number, or the average plays per turn closer to 1 by going from I get to play it once per shuffle to I get to play it, depending on when I draw it during the shuffle, somewhere between once and close to every turn. So that's certainly nice. Yeah, I think this has the potential to be quite strong. There are going to be boards where it doesn't really do anything, but there are going to be boards where it's a huge accelerant, for, like I said, things like trashing, junking, Travelers, and that sort of thing. Next up is Pursue. 2-cost event. +1 buy. Name a card. Reveal the top 4 cards from your deck. Put the matches back and discard the rest. So this is sort of like Reverse Doctor, I guess, where instead of naming a card that you want to get rid of, you name a card that you want to keep. You can, of course, name something that you're not going to find, so that you just discard everything. I think this definitely has the potential to be really strong for deck and shuffle control. Controlling shuffle triggers, just triggering a bad shuffle, knowing that you can pursue and throw all the garbage off the top of your deck. Being able to just put a bunch of cards into your discard pile that aren't so great, and then maybe 1 or 2 really nice cards, and then discard the crap and top deck the nice card, stuff like that. I think it's gonna have a similar-ish niche to cards or events, I guess I should say, that Scouting Party, but I think it might actually be better than Scouting Party. It's a little hard to say. But yeah, somewhere in that general range. Reap, 7-cost event. Gain a gold. Set it aside. If you do, at the start of your next turn, play it. Yeah, so when you want gold, if you hit 7, you might as well reap. When you don't want gold, you've got to hit 7 to be able to even do this. So it's unlikely that you're going to be using this to hit some greater price point in general. If you're already hitting 7, maybe if you're trying to get a province for tournament, or some other hitting 8 is a big deal thing, Citadel or something. or like even trying to gain platinum or buy platinum, I should say. But yeah, I don't know how often you're going to want to do this if you don't otherwise like want a lot of gold in your deck. It's really expensive. So like the opportunity cost of spending your buy and your money on this as opposed to like on some like nice action card or something is pretty high. And then you know, gaining the gold and setting it aside is good for spiking a price point, but like you've already spiked a pretty high price point, so I'm a little skeptical of this one as being useful outside of like pretty money focused decks. Next up, ride, 2-cost event, gain a horse. Well, that's straightforward enough. Yeah, this seems like a thing to do on a 5-2 where you don't have much going on the 2. It seems like something that you're going to spend like extra buys on just because like you got them and you might as well, but it's, you know, not something that you're going to like go out of your way to focus on doing unless like there's some kind of synergy, which sometimes there is going to be, but you know, it's in a vacuum, it's like not super strong or anything like that. Seize the Day, 4-cost event. Once per game, take an extra turn after this one. Oh boy, the analysis paralysis on this guy. Deciding when you're going to take that extra turn. Yeah, that's going to be tough. I suspect that like the stronger the board is, the earlier you're going to want to do this. You're going to basically just, you know, treat it kind of sort of like mission or something like that, where you're like, you know, I just really want to get my travelers going as fast as I can, or I really want to like give my opponent another curse, or, you know, accelerate my trashing, like you know, blah blah blah, donate, like I don't know, stuff like that. But of course sometimes it's going to be, you know, like a late game thing where you really need to score you know, some extra points, and so you need to take an extra turn and, you know, that sort of thing. You can use this as like a way to really control pile outs like that, which is going to be absolutely nuts, right? Like somebody's counting up your buys and like, okay, he's got 6 or 7 buys, or 8 buys, or whatever, and then no, it turns out you've got, you know 2n-1 buys, right? You know, so instead of 6 buys, you have 11 buys, right? Because you buy Seize the Day, and then you take another turn, and then you know, and like now like the pile out stuff is just crazy. So yeah, this is pretty nuts. Certainly, well, yeah, I'm gonna say certainly more powerful than Fleet. Like definitely more powerful than Fleet. And then we've got Transport, 3-cost event. Choose one, exile an action card from the supply, or put an action card you have in exile onto your deck. Okay, so this seems really nice as an opener. So you transport the 5 cost that you want on turn 1 or turn 2, and then on turn 3 you transport it again, and it goes on top of your deck, and you play it on turn 4. Or actually, you just do it turns 1 and 2 for that matter. Yeah. And I mean, after the opening, you know, you'll still use it. You know, when you don't hit the price point that you want, you don't want to get. You don't want to buy 3. You just want to buy 5s, transport them. It seems really good. All right, now we get into the ways, starting with Way of the Butterfly. You may return this to its pile to gain a card costing exactly 1 more than it. So this is like a self-upgrade way. The the catch is that, well, I mean, obviously you can't upgrade non-actions, but also like that it has to have a pile to return it to. So I'm pretty sure that means you can't upgrade something that came out of the black market. You can't upgrade Necropolis. You can upgrade things like knights and like split pile cards. Actually, if you have a split pile, like, or maybe there aren't, maybe there. Well, okay, let's say that you, like, could you end up in a situation where like the split pile has like the bottom part on top of the top part because of this? I think you could. It's kind of weird. Anyway, so I think it, like, this seems, well, I mean, you can, it also, there's some similarity with improve, right? Where improve, you know, sometimes you buy improve just so that you can improve the improve into like some forecast that you want, or, you know, things along those lines. The difference is that improve gives you some money when you're doing it, and you don't have, improve doesn't have to target itself. But I mean, you could do something similar where you're like, you open with some 4 cost that you don't care about just so you can Way of the Butterfly it into a 5 cost that you want. And then it, you know, that's basically just as good as like opening, you know, like double silver and buying it or whatever. So yeah. Can also use this to get rid of actions that you no longer want. I feel like I've mentioned this a lot in the context of ways. All right, here we go. Way of the Mouse. Play the set aside card, leaving it there. Setup. Set aside an unused action costing 2 or 3. So the wording on this is a little weird, but I did actually look at this a little bit already. And basically, it's like, you know, Young Witch, which adds an extra supply pile. So you, I mean, you're not adding a supply pile, but you're, you know, just from the vast space of all potential kingdom cards, you grab some action card, set it aside, and now your way is to, well, it has to be costing 2 or 3, but your way is to like play that action instead of whatever you're playing the mouse as. And probably needless to say, it's basically impossible to evaluate Way of the Mouse in a vacuum. You just need to know what the set aside card is. So see what it is and then make your determination from there. Way of the Owl. Draw until you have 6 cards in hand. So you can turn anything into a draw to X card, which is pretty cool. I don't know how good that actually is, but I think it's pretty good. I mean, at the very least, you can basically turn any card, you know, like from a sort of starting hand of 5 into a draw 2 cards, which is not great, but might be better than what it does otherwise. Again, you know, you have the example of like Chapel or whatever, like, what am I going to do with this? Well, now you can use it as a watchtower. I mean, it certainly makes it easier to set up a draw to X engine because, for example, if you need to like find like your village and your draw to X card, well, now the villages can also be the draw to X card. So you can just invest in tons of villages and then not actually have to invest in the draw to X cards. You can also like play your payload cards as your draw to X. Like, this might actually be one of the best like terminal draw to X engines or like cards, if you will, out there, just because of the fact that it's not required that you actually play it that way. Yeah, in fact, I'm tempted to just say that it is, but probably shouldn't be so confident. Way of the Seal. +1 coin. This turn, when you gain a card, you may put it onto your deck. So, Way of the Tracker, minus the boon. Yeah, I mean, being able to top deck cards is a good effect. Tracker is not like the strongest card by any means, but having the option to play something as a tracker is pretty nice, and having it not like having the like tracker itself not take up a spot in your deck is pretty nice. So I think this is pretty solid. Yeah. Way of the Squirrel, +2 cards at the end of this turn. So you can... I don't really have like a good analogy for this, but I mean, you can basically set yourself up with some duration draw. Saving his acorns for the winter. Yeah. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, you know, it's just another one of these cases, like with so many of these, where it's like if you've got things that you don't really need to play for what their normal effects are, you know, get some benefit out of it. I mean, +2 cards of duration draw is good, right? Den of Sin is a really good card. Of course, Den of Sin isn't terminal and it's gained to hand, but it's, you know, the effect is still quite nice. And I think that is the end of this is the toil art. Yeah, this is going to get into the pre-built kingdoms, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Recommended sets of 10. So, yeah, that's all the cards. We got through that in an hour. I'd like to think that I managed to get through that at a more rapid pace than I did the previews, but I feel like I sort of lost track of the need to move quickly as I was moving along. It's hard. There's so many exciting things to talk about. Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff going on here. So, if you're wondering, that is not all of the cards. We haven't seen all of them. And if you want proof of that, where is it? Way of the Worm, right here. We have not seen this. So we don't know what this is. Just know that it's something that probably isn't too complicated because it doesn't have any explanatory text. But yeah, so we haven't seen every single one of the cards in here. We have Way of the Monkey. There's another one. Suddenly I can't select. Fine, whatever. It's right. Oh, Way of the Goat. We haven't seen that either. We have the Mule. We haven't seen that. We have the Camel. Yeah, so there's still some stuff yet to be revealed. We might have seen all of the action cards. Just sort of looking through here to see whether there's anything else that I don't recognize. Nothing is jumping out at me. Yeah, so I get the impression that we've seen all of the action cards or like kingdom cards. Oh, here, Way of the Frog. I get the impression we've seen all the kingdom cards and all the events. We just haven't seen all of the ways. Kind of odd that there were so many ways that they didn't have a rules page about. Some of the ways are very simple. Okay, that's fair. Some of them are very simple. Yeah, we didn't see like Way of the Ox in here, for example, because it's very simple. So fair enough. Anyway, so yeah, we'll have some more ways to talk about when those are revealed, which should be within the next 24 hours, because I believe Steph said that the expansion would go live on the client within 24 hours of him posting about the rulebook being posted. Anyway, so I'll probably do another like quick video about those once those are revealed tomorrow. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for some more Dominion stuff some other time.